Now, before I tell you what I liked about this episode of The Flash, let me tell you what I didn't like about it. The exposition. There was too much exposition, which not only slowed down its pace, but also gave this story a somewhat strange, rushed quality, almost as if it had to be finished right now in one large chunk. This included things like an explanation about Harley's new job at Terrific Tech, the West updating everyone about their current family setup, the mayor's rhetoric about quarantining the city, as well as a number of other scenarios that sometimes felt rather heavy-handed and unneeded due to the lengthy pieces of text conveyed in each scene, especially for a comic book that's more about fun and family instead of prose and procrastination. Another good example of this can be seen at the end of the book when Wally talks to, well, to avoid spoilers, let's say everyone, about some of the arduous events he's had to face within recent years. Except for the events depicted in Heroes in Crisis, thank God, which I'm happy to say was totally ignored, as it would have turned this book into a therapy session, not a rushed conclusion, which in essence is exactly what it was. I didn't like the way Wally was treated in this issue either, as he sometimes came across as a subservient, dim-witted husband who by his own accord had to be saved 2 times. First, at the start of the book, when he was overpowered by the rogues and saved by Hartley, and then at the end of it, when Hartley and his family had to save him once again as he was overpowered by Wolf and his crew. Saying so while keeping in mind that Wally is a far more experienced hero than any of his so-called saviours, and seemingly walked into each situation uncharacteristically unprepared. Having said that though, I did like the artwork depicted in this issue, as it was bold, expressive and very easy to follow. At one point, I thought I was reading a book illustrated by one of my favourite artists, Kevin Maguire, who back in the day illustrated the main Justice League title. I also have to applaud the way in which this adventure managed to,
partial spoiler alert,
amalgamate the previous general storyline into this one, as well as the way it tried to do something new with its cast of characters. After all, can Wally trust Wolf and the rogues now that they've seemingly turned over a new leaf? And if he can't, what will Wally do next, as he still has to think about the safety of his family as well as the city he continues to protect? As many of you know, I've been a Batman fan for many years, partly because I like the way most of his adventures are based in some sort of reality and don't always veer off into hyperbolic directions. In this case though, well, this final part of the Failsafe saga has me in a bit of a tizzy, because on the one hand, the art was amazing, the conclusion made some sort of sense, and overall it was a really exciting read. While on the other hand, I was rather frustrated with how certain scenes took liberties with reality by presenting us with events not based on any sort of logic. The best example of this can be seen at the start of the book, where we see Batman stranded in space until he quickly puts on an air supply, grabs hold of a propulsion unit and then whisks himself towards Earth on a makeshift glider. But the thing is, this doesn't make any sense, not one little bit, as Batman would have died straight away due to the lack of oxygen in space, or at the very least, either froze to death or burnt to death while gliding towards Earth. I wasn't too keen on the way this episode ended either, because,
spoiler alert,
Batman supposedly dies, although in reality he's just injured and still alive somewhere else. In fact, it's very similar to what happened to him at the end of the Final Crisis saga, the Endgame event, and a number of other adventures that either left him injured or temporarily incapacitated. That said, however, it was still a very exciting read, and despite some of its more notable flaws, I do have hope that the aftermath of this adventure will be more original and more grounded in reality. Along similar lines, I wasn't too keen about the backup feature as well, because likewise, it presented us with some great looking artwork, but the story felt unfocused and benign on the page. In retrospect, I'd say there are many different words I could use to define this particular episode of Daredevil. Words like dynamic, because I loved those dynamic scenes where Elektra faced off against Iron Man in order to confront the alleged President of America. Naive, as a large portion of the plot was devoted to Matt attempting to naively rehabilitate the criminals he liberated from prison. And earthy, due to the earthy looking artwork depicted throughout this issue, which was atmospheric by design and moody by default. But more importantly, I'd also say that this issue was nuts, bloody nuts, simply because it's nuts to see Elektra confronting Iron Man despite them both being on the same side of a different coin, and it was nuts to see Daredevil trying to justify his methods of rehabilitating prisoners even though he knows full well that some criminals still need to be punished for their crimes. Crimes, I hasten to add, that they are all still guilty of, even if they are saved by Matt and are allowed to roam the world with the rest of society. Now please don't get me wrong, as I'm not trying to say that I did enjoy reading this adventure or the message it ultimately wanted to convey, but in the same breath, said message did seem slightly misguided, obtuse even, especially when you take into consideration real world factors that should have been taken on board by Daredevil and the rest of his crew. Having said that though, I did enjoy reading the exchange between Matt and Bullet, as they did flesh out some of these areas in a rather revealing fashion, and without giving too much away, the way in which this issue ended was a right blast. At the end of last month's episode, we saw the Joker and the Key kidnap Kid Thunder, so this month we find out if Batman, Superman and Robin, along with the rest of the Teen Titans, managed to track him down and save the day. But can they do this? Can these heroes save David and beat up the bad guys in one fell swoop, or will they get to him too late? Well, to cut a long story short, yes, they do manage to save him, but not until the Key tells David his origin story and his reasons for teaming up with the Joker. That's when the heroes bust into the Joker's secret lair and well, how do I put this? How can I tell you about the circumstances surrounding this story's conclusion without giving the game away? I don't think I can, not directly anyway, but the one thing I can say for certain is that I did enjoy reading this issue, not only because the artwork was nicely illustrated and easy to follow, but in addition to this, the story in itself was really exciting to read, as it had a suspenseful quality that continually compelled me to ask questions at each stage of the plot. Questions like, can the heroes track down David?
Yes.
Why did the Key team up with the Joker?
Well, from the looks of it, so he can free his mind from his own mental turmoil.
What will happen when the heroes finally catch up with the villains?
Shit happens.
And is David actually Magog?
Also known as one of the main bad guys behind the Kingdom Come saga.
So, all in all, I'd say this episode of The World's Finest was a right blast to read, as I enjoyed its fun tone and its intriguing direction.